we have a bit of a problem.
Yeah?
Well, for those who listened to last week's episode, we might have mentioned at the end of the episode, jokingly, quotation marks, I have a clone named Caleb 2 who lives in the bathroom.
Okay.
Well, I went to use the cold, freezing bathroom earlier, and he got out.
He didn't get to the surge, did he?
I don't know. No, the surge can's still there. I think we would have known if he got to the surge. I heard some kind of howling outside, and he split. I'm hoping he goes more of the original Frankenstein route, where he just lives in somebody's fucking hut for a little bit and gets really smart.
Yeah. The ulcer rips the arm off the little girls.
Yeah, I don't like kids anyway. But, what if he doesn't go that route? Then what do we do? Then we just got a hulking Brock Lesnar shaped Caleb 2, who in the face kind of looks like me, so people will think, like, oh, Caleb must have been roiding up, and now he's causing mayhem in the neighborhood. And I just moved here in the summer. I don't want to get kicked out.
Yeah, I think that's, I don't know what you're gonna do about that.
Wait a minute.
I don't have a genetic, doppelganger clone running around causing mayhem anywhere.
Well, you remember when Mindy cut your hair, and also that one time I took your blood because I said the DPW bank needed it? That wasn't true at all. So, Spencer, too, he's incubating. Not in my bathroom, obviously. That'd be weird to have him with Caleb, too, in the bathroom. But see, here's the original plan for the clone.
Is he down in the shed?
I mean,
are
you asking, did I dig a special compartment under the shed?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's going to be one of those deals where you open up the shed, but it's just a hidden door to an underground, lab.
Yeah, not so much a lab, it's just like a dirt room. But, it's fine. Anyway, my goal with the cloning, which obviously went awry, was so we didn't have to do this podcast anymore. The clones could do the podcast.
Well, I thought, couldn't the clones just work for us?
Do what?
I mean, they're our jobs.
I didn't think of that.
To free us to do, more of the podcast and the writing and the reading and that stuff.
Maybe, but I feel like if we did that, then the clones would eventually want our lives, and then we get killed, and they take over because they're clones.
And there's also a chance of them doing the job better than us, too.
Well, that's a guarantee, because they'd be fresh at it. They wouldn't have all the years of neglect from the management and, everything that comes along with the working life. Also, they probably, at least in my job, I would imagine some people would get killed, because I'm not teaching Caleb 2 how to drive, let alone a giant truck, so... Matter of fact, I don't think your job would be very safe either for Spencer 2. For a reason, Spencer 2 doesn't have much of a top head, but he's all jaw. Quadruple Jay Leno. These guys are really ugly.
We're like French fried potato.
It'd be the biggest kick in the nuts. After we kick fucking Caleb 2 and Spencer 2 to the curb, because obviously we're not keeping the mutant clones, is they go start their own writing career. They're wildly successful.
Yeah.
They start a podcast way better than us. And, fucking, I don't like it. They would have, inebriated pencil sketchings or something.
It'd be the clone cast.
The clone cast. We should just start recording episodes as our doppelgangers for the clone cast. Welcome to the DPW Clone Cast. Today we're talking about butts. Do you like them? Or do you think they poop too much? I don't know why anyone would tune into this podcast after hearing these shenanigans. The Surge bit, I thought was going to tank the podcast.
Yeah, that was just going to be the end.
But it didn't. If anything, it gained us at least 3 listeners in Surge Bekistan. Well, now we got to talk about books, right?
I think that's what we're doing.
Howdy, y'all. You're listening to the Drunken Pen Writing Podcast. I'm your host, Caleb James. With me today, Spencer, the Queensland Quickqueefer Church. It's hard with the Q's.
Yeah.
Queensland Quickqueefer. That was hard. It's easier to say it fast.
So not only am I somehow able to
queef,
but I can do it very rapidly.
You do it with some speed and gusto. I like it. Why you do it? I don't know.
It must be Canadian.
Canadian?
Because
the Queef sisters. Yeah. That's I guess that's not obscure. I feel like that's more obscure because that's like newer South Park, and a lot of people don't quote newer South Park. Today we are, if you read the title, you already know. I guess this is just Book of the Month, right?
Or just, I don't know.
We'll just make a Book of the Month and talk about both. We are talking about Slaughterhouse-Five, but also we're doing something different. We have the graphic novel adaptation. So Slaughterhouse-Five is by Kurt Vonnegut, as everybody knows. But is Albert Monti did they both write this? The graphic novel, who put this out? Because this is really good. Is this Image?
No, it's Arcada.
Oh, Archaea?
Archaea / they're like a secret, like a thing of Boom.
Oh, okay.
They're like one of their like kind of like I think like they merged together at some point.
Well, before we even start, I just highly recommend anybody pick up the graphic novel adaptation by Ryan North and Albert Montes. It is, you said Archaea. That's the
yeah.
And then it's the Slaughterhouse-Five or the Children's Crusades, which is the alternate name for Slaughterhouse-Five. Just to give a quick summary, because we don't need to really break all this shit down. It's a story, like Slaughterhouse-Five is one of the most famous anti-war novels written of all time. It's actually about Kurt Vonnegut's, he lived through the Dresden bombing, which is at the time was like the biggest bombing in Europe. It might still be the biggest bombing in, European history. He lived through that, and they survived by staying in a slaughterhouse number 5. That's where the title comes from. But the story, like, that's the only thing, like, the war part is off of Kurt Vonnegut's life, which I like in the graphic novel, they actually have Kurt Vonnegut in there.
Yeah.
That was really fun. But it's about a man named Billy Pilgrim. He is, I kind of say like a petite man. He's like long and skinny, gangly.
Before reading the graphic novel, whenever I was reading just the regular novel, I had the I can't think of his name, but he was he was like the white guy in the Black Panther movie. He was like the CIA like agent guy who like helped them out. He's like he plays Holmes in or not Holmes, but Watson on the BBC America Sherlock.
I kind of know who you're talking about, but I don't remember that guy.
He was like in the first season of Fargo too. He was in The Hobbit. He was the Hobbit, I do believe.
He was the Hobbit?
One of the
Hobbits or the Hobbit?
The Hobbit from the prequel movies.
You literally, other than the actual Black Panther movie, every single thing you just named, I've never watched. I never watched Fargo, the show.
I think you would like Fargo.
My sister always tells me I need to. I've never watched Watson. I don't watch Doctor Who. I don't watch fucking I never saw The Hobbit. It's like, you just named
I never watched The Hobbit. I didn't.
You would love it. It's about short guys in the woods.
With big feet.
Big hairy feet.
But anyways, just like that guy, just because like he's been able to play like kind of like smaller, easily intimidated kind of like, kind of person.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll go continue.
I just want to endure the silence. Just stare at you.
As I ramble.
As you ramble about some guy, I don't know his name. I guess I could have been fucking help and actually looked it up, but I don't want to.
Yeah.
So, Billy Pilgrim is a prisoner of war in World War II, which is not really much of a fighter anyway. And he ends up in a prison camp with a bunch of very cheery Englishmen, by the way. And then they send him to Slaughterhouse-Five. But it was before that, I think it was right before they got captured. He gets unstuck in time.
For the first time.
And then what that leads to is one of the most interesting time travel, I guess you just go with time travel stories I've read, but like the actual mechanics of the time travel is cool. Because he ends, like, it goes through all parts of his life and also a time he spent with these aliens. He was in a zoo. He eventually gets a lady who joins him in the zoo, so it's just a zoo of 2, and they have a kid in there.
And I don't know about you, but I feel like once he gets unstuck in time, whenever he goes to see, like, whenever he time travel to a certain part of his life, like, that's not the first time he's he's traveled to that part of his life. Like,
well, the aliens explain it, and the graphic novel adaptation, I think, does a better job of showing how things work. But the way the aliens explain it to Billy Pilgrim is that time is just like a big stretch that you could just, for them, they could just point to wherever they would want to go. So, say you had a birthday party in your 30s, they could just go watch that and they would enjoy it. Because he asked them like about death and, like what happens, when everybody dies, right? And they're like, yeah, but we just choose, and he was asking them like, it's like a very peaceful alien culture. You guys don't have any wars like humans. And like, well, we do. We just choose not to ever look at those.
Yeah, we ignore those.
Yeah, we just ignore. So they just ignore like their deaths and things like that. So they'll just keep going to the zoo and see them. But how many times did they see them in the zoo? Fucking infinite. They just keep going back and looking whenever they want.
They also explain it as like, because that all periods in time exist at the same time.
Yeah.
So that no matter, like, even that when you die, that you're still very much alive.
Yeah. If you die, you're alive in all these other parts of your time. I forget what the quote was, but there was a part in the book where they say something along the lines of, even though you die, you're alive more than you're dead.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess after you die, I don't know if it really explained, like, can they see things from after their death? Or is it just, like, your life is the time stretch? I guess it would be just your life because they can't go like before they were born.
Yeah.
But anyway, so literally in the novel version, and it's kind of like that in the graphic novel, it's a little more spaced out. But in the novel version, it's literally every other paragraph he'll be in a different time of his life sometimes, and it's really interesting. Sounds like it shouldn't work at all, especially for the fact that it's more of a literary novel than it is a sci-fi novel.
And considering on when it was written too.
Yeah, I don't know the exact date, but like 1950.
Yeah, like that idea seems like almost like a now idea.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and like I really, really enjoyed the book. And like the main thing is so it goes.
Yeah.
And whenever they did that in the graphic novel too, anytime somebody dies or something dies, it comes from the aliens who, when something dies, they just go so it goes because they can see all time, so it doesn't really matter. Like when you die, it's not that important. So anytime there was death, which in the war there's a lot of death, it's just so it goes. What Vonnegut was doing with that was he was making it out to be that it, like, death is so commonplace, it's not a big deal, even though to us humans it's a big deal. And I think that was just kind of a way to kind of show the the lack of humanity in war, because like there's so much death and stuff, especially World War II, that if you really stop to focus on it, which I think at a couple parts Billy Pilgrim, he goes like kind of mad.
Yeah.
He ends up in a loony bin, actually.
A couple times.
Yeah, he has PTSD real bad. He ends up in a loony bin. But Vonnegut, he plays it very cool. He plays it like death isn't a big deal, but clearly, Billy Pilgrim, even though he can see the future and stuff, he has the post-traumatic stress disorder, and then he deals with a lot of people that have those issues. It's very interesting. Like, they brought up the school teacher who was in the prison camp with them, and then he ends up getting, like, shot. This is a lot of really cool shit like that, though. I really enjoyed, like, the time travel aspects. Because I never thought of time travel as, like you said, everything exists at the same time. It's just a matter of, like, flipping a page in a book.
Yeah, because there's no time machine. There's no, like, magic watch you're wearing. It's, like, literally sometimes within, like, a blink of an eye, he's someplace else.
Yeah, he'll be sitting there, which neither version of this, it really described if he had a control over it. Or at least that I remember. If he
doesn't seem like it.
I don't think he really can. Whereas the aliens seem like they can control it. He would just randomly be somewhere else. Maybe you just think of something and then you end up there.
Reading it almost kind of reminded me of that, that award-winning Adam Sandler movie Click.
Yeah.
Of kind of whenever he would fast forward in time, like he didn't except Billy would have memories from going. Yeah. Because that was something I was kind of running as reading it. Like, I wonder, because anytime if he time travels and he travels to some place where there's like people around him, they're always like, hey, hey, he's like staring off.
Yeah.
Until when he comes back, and it's like, so like I always wonder what Billy was doing before he timed, like what his self was doing before he time travel to himself. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, is he just like auto mode? I mean, technically he lived every part of his life, but that's the weird thing, because if he became unstuck in time, that means he always was unstuck in time after that period, right? So
because he even travels back to time to when he was like a kid, and and his dad threw him into the pool.
Yeah. It was just very interesting reading, reading about somebody's life too, where it's so spaced out. Because what Vonnegut would do is he would show like some horrible thing during the war, and then go to all of a sudden you're just at a happier time in Billy's life.
Yeah.
Or he survives a plane crash when he's older. He's the only survivor, and then he would end up going back either to the war, and they would do something like one horror, how it matches against the horror, like a mirroring effect.
That would be like they're talking about to the war, and then they're flashed to a time where he's like an older man, and he's talking about these aliens, and you're like, oh yeah? And then they just jump back and just leave it alone for however long, and go back to the war stuff or whatever, and like
when he's older, he tries to tell people, and they think he's just an old crank, like he's just out of his mind. And it does seem like too when he was getting older, like he was getting crazier.
Yeah.
It just I don't know. Like the zoo parts too were really weird because he liked being in the zoo, kind of.
Well, I always wondered, like, and I'm surprised, and I guess it would have been the easier way to be that the aliens had some way of to deal with him being unstuck in time. But they don't. It is just for some reason you don't know why, you don't know how.
Yeah, it's not explained.
He just becomes unstuck in time.
I think they just said something like that. It happens sometimes.
Yeah,
they just didn't really care. That was the weird thing about the aliens, which in the graphic novel version, I think you mentioned this off air before. That's not how you thought they would look.
Yeah, I don't know how I thought they would look, because I thought in the book they described them as like you couldn't make them out because of them being in the fourth dimension.
Yeah, something weird
kind of thing. But in the graphic novel, they're like these like big hand creatures with eyes in the middle of the palms.
Well, there's also a character in the book, what's his name? Kilgore Trout?
Yeah.
When Billy Pilgrim's in the loony bin, he I think another guy from the surface is there, and that guy reads a lot of sci-fi, and he turns Billy Pilgrim on, like a bad sci-fi too. This Kilgore Trout guy writes like really interesting stories, but he's a very shitty writer. Well, in the graphic novel, what they did was they made it out like comics. So they'll actually have a couple pages of one of Kilgore Trout's stories as a comic. And, again, very terrible, most of them, but they're pretty fun.
Well, it's like I told you, like, how mad did that make you feel that, like, just like Kurt Vonnegut's, like, throwaway ideas that he did for this comic were just, like, for, like, those novels would just be like, I want to read those. Or I would. What can I ever think of anything that interesting? Like,
I want to be that cool and write fun stuff. I'm trying to. Until I read the graphic novel, I forgot how many great characters were in this book too.
Yeah,
but the way, because of the time travel stuff, they really just come and go. You never really follow up with most of them. Some of them you get their death and stuff, but
and the art does a really good job of helping to like because remember that one podcast I told you I was listening to with the writer? He was talking about the artist, like, whenever they're in the what is it? Is it honey? Is it a honey factory? Or what's the maple? Or,
maple syrup.
Maple syrup.
Not there. Is it maple syrup? It's like an offshoot product or something that has like a lot of nutrients in it. But yeah, like kind of like maple syrup.
But like whenever Billy took the spoonful and like he chained, like he brightened up, and whenever the teacher whenever he gave him some, he brightened up too, just like cool. The artist does a cool way of different storytelling things to enhance like parts of the stories and stuff like that.
Yeah, I like the way they were able to, like when they had their weird musical, because the English guys were kind of living like kings in the prison camp because like. Whatever, what was it? It was like the Red Cross or something like that sent them a bunch of supplies, but they sent way too many on accident. So the English guys are just living it up, and they're just playing like Cinderella or weird shit. And I just like how in the art, the storytelling through the art is they were just able to show like the joy these guys were having in such a miserable time, but then it cuts to Billy who's laughing, but then they realize, wait, he's laughing too hard. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, he's having a manic episode, and he just loses his shit. He just... Again, the post-traumatic stress disorder. He's just fucking freaking out.
Well, and then there was a scene where it's just like I think when they're still in the train carts, and he's trying to find some place to sleep, And they're like, no. He's
Scream
like,
and kick in your
yeah,
sleep.
he's like, yeah, I do. Like, and
Yeah.
so there's like a lot of, they do a lot of stuff like with that.
Well, with the visual aspect of the graphic novel, I think you get a better depiction of Billy. Because, like, in the book, it's written kind of like how the graphic novel is, where Billy just seems like a kind of a calm, normal-mannered guy for the most part. At the beginning, he's clearly very depressed, but again, it's played off like just whatever. Like, I think he just wants to, like, die or kill himself pretty much. But the way it's played off, it doesn't seem like it's that depressing, even though he's, like, walking in the fucking snowy... Were they in Russia yet, or Europe somewhere?
Somewhere, Germany, right?
Germany, maybe? Yeah, wherever they were, Anyway, they were wandering through the fucking snow, and he has, like, a fucking hole in his boot, and, like, just everything sucks for him. He's wearing, like, a shitty coat the Germans gave him or something. But, like, he's so depressed, and it's just played off like, just whatever, Billy being normal or something. But he's not normal. He's, like, he has all these emotions throughout this whole book that aren't really shown.
Yeah.
And that kind of gives you, like, even with you mentioned the staring thing, like, when he goes through time, people are like, hey, you just kind of stared off there for a minute. That reminds me of, like, the 1,000-yard stare you always hear about, like, old war vets. Like, they just kind of, their mind is completely somewhere else. Technically, that's why I think the time travel might be kind of a metaphor for that. Is because, you see old war vets or something, and they're just staring at nothing. They're probably back reliving some awful thing in the war, storming a Normandy or something, storming the beaches of Normandy. So I would imagine, even though he's going through time, it's probably like a play on that, is that he's seeing other things that nobody else can see, because he's lived. And also, I'm not related to that at all. I like the scene where he goes to that bookstore looking for, I think, a Kilgore Trout book, and he ends up in the nudie section.
Well, I think he just happens to be walking by, and it's the window dressing to make it look like a normal kind of like bookstore. And then when you get in, that's when they have all the smut. Yeah,
and they took him, but he went back. That's what was funny. He did go back to the nudie section. But that doesn't really have anything to do with anything.
Well, it's kind of fitting, too, because the story, we've been kind of jumping all around but like you were saying, like, there's a lot of cool characters, because the story just kind of starts with, like, him, like, Billy and another guy, and, like, some, like, scouts from the Allies, and they're just trying to, like, make their way through some, like, they got, like, separated or whatever.
Yeah, they're just trying to find, like, camp or something, anything, just to, not the enemy soldiers. They end up getting caught, though.
Yep. Because of Billy, they say. Because the one guy
blames Billy because Billy's having another breakdown. Again, he's so, like, he just pretty much wants to die. I think he just lays against a tree, which actually I think is the first time he becomes unstuck in time.
Yeah, because he even tells him to, like, go. Like, he's like, just leave.
Yeah, and they don't. Those aliens are called Tralfamadorians, and in the book they're just a hand with eyeball.
Yeah,
hand with an eyeball in the palm. So they're weird. Also, that Howard Campbell Jr., the American Nazi guy.
Yeah.
That was a weird character, because was he like a Texan or something?
Yeah.
He's like, but he's a fucking Nazi, and I was like, I'm getting some weird connections with fucking modern America right now reading this. I don't know. See a bunch of Texans acting like Nazis. That's not cool.
The one complaint I do have that I just wish that they could have just been a paragraph. They never really explain how Billy gets back home on Earth once he goes into the zoo. Yeah, because he does come back because he dies. So he comes back from the zoo.
Yeah, he went to the zoo in his like 30s or 40s, I think. Because he was like a kid.
40. I think it was like because it had to be at least 40 because like it was after his daughter's wedding.
Yeah, but then he has like they bring it was like a porn star or stripper or something there, and then he ends up having a kid with her while they're in the zoo. And then, did it even explain what happened to her and the kid after? Like, he goes back to Earth at some point.
Yeah, man, I assume that they're still at the zoo. Because he even says that, because when he goes to the smut thing, he sees, like, a magazine of, like, oh, whatever happened to whatever her name is. And they're like, oh, Billy knows she's still on, what's the name of the planet?
Transformia,
raising his third kid, but they never bring up on like why'd he come back, how'd he come back. Why didn't he say that? Because he's,
Yeah, because he seemed happy there. That was another thing. He always seemed content where he was, even though he probably wasn't. So the train car, at some point there was just like a dead body, and they're just packed in there like sardines, and there's just a fucking dead guy, and everybody's shitting in the corners and stuff. It's terrible. They dumped the shit out the windows.
Yeah.
But Billy, he just like was just there. He just like everything that's happening, he is just kind of there, just going with the motions. And that kind of goes back to the time travel thing. Is like he just kind of goes with everything. He doesn't even try to really alter time or anything.
Well, yeah, because he knows like it's already happened, so he knows like that's what it is. Like there's even like he knows like whenever he's about to get abducted by the aliens, he has like an hour to kill, so he watches. Is it a Western?
I think so.
Or maybe like a war movie or something like that. And then he's like, oh, well, it's time. They're going to be here soon. So he just walks out into his yard, with some flat champagne, waiting for them to, lower down the ladder.
Well, I think that's why he does the things, like the way he acts throughout the book, how he's just, like I said, just kind of goes with the motions and stuff. And even when something very bad's going to happen, like he's going to go on the train, and like they even go leading up to the bombing of Dresden, everybody's worried they could die or something. Well, he already knows what's going to happen. At some point, I mean, he had to live through it once for real.
Yeah.
But even so, like, he knows what's going to happen. So he's like, well, I don't die here. So everything through the book, he's just like, oh, this is the time period I fucking get in a plane crash. Like when he goes in the plane crash, he knows everybody dies. He knows it's horrible. And beforehand, when he's even getting on the plane, he's like, yeah, this is going to fucking suck. But I'm just not going to focus on this part because I know later on life's better.
Because he's on the plane with his father-in-law. Mm-hmm. And then his wife dies on the way to the...
She gets in an accident. Yeah, that's very fucking depressed. This is one of the... If you really look at it, if Kurt Vonnegut wasn't such a fucking hilarious writer, this would be the most depressing book. Because everybody pretty much just dies or has awful things happen to them.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, not so much in the book, maybe a little bit more in the graphic novel. And it's not saying I didn't like it, but like I didn't feel like a lot of like there wasn't like a lot of moments where I just kind of like openly laughed or anything like that. Because I was like, I remember always hearing like that it was supposed to be one a really funny book.
It's like morbidly funny though. It's not.
Which I like,
but morbidly funny normally isn't something you're laughing out loud at. Yeah. It's not like I don't. It's just something you go, oh, that's like, it kind of tickles you in a weird way. Like the graphic novel was funnier than the actual novel.
Yeah.
Again, just because it was more of a cartoony art style too, which really lent itself to the story in a way that I didn't think. Like I would think more of a serious art style, but that actually I thought worked. I was a little iffy on it at first, but then the more I read, I enjoyed it.
I think it helps make some of the worst things more palatable.
Yeah, the subject matter is a little more palatable because of that. But just like Kurt Vonnegut's writing style, because there was like multiple times where something would die, and it just seems like it should be like a very terrible incident, and he just goes, and so it goes. And you're just like, it's like, I guess it goes. Like you just feel yourself kind of either chuckling to it or just like, well, it takes the sting out of what you're reading. But like I said, if you didn't have, like if it was just a story about Billy Pilgrim's life without the time travel and weirdness, it'd be really fucking sad.
Oh yeah,
it would suck ass. You're like, oh, you gotta live through fucking Dresden. That's horrible. I mean, the only thing I compare that to is like if somebody wrote about like the storming the beaches of Normandy and did it in a way that made it not as horrible as it was, which sounds impossible, right?
Yeah, right.
Like how do you have thousands how many people died in the Dresden bomb? Like 25,000 or something crazy? And the fact that Kurt Vonnegut even lived that is pretty wild. Because like almost everything was destroyed. Because I've seen the before and after pictures. The whole fucking city was just like rubble. But again, he was in that slaughterhouse.
Well, do you notice in the graphic novel, there's like when they first get there, there's a big two-page spread of the town.
Yeah.
And then later on, after it gets bombed, it's the same 2-page spread, but with everything all like broken and destroyed and stuff like that.
Here's something interesting for you, and I'm gonna butcher this because I read this a long time ago. There is a famous story. I actually think this goes with our last episode? We talked about parallel dimensions.
Yeah.
Like alternate dimensions. I think it'd be more along the lines of that than time travel. But there's a story, and I don't think there were They might have been Americans or Australians. I forget which ones. But I think it was like a guy in the Air Force or something. He's flying over the ocean. And he ends up getting like fucking lost or something. And I could be mixing this up with another story. It might not have anything to do with the guy flying. But just for the sake of the story, we'll say he's flying. And he ends up landing at an airbase or flying over an airbase that looks completely different or something. And then I think he ends up, he sees like a picture or he flies over, I think he flies over Dresden or something and it's like nice. And, or no, they got it backwards. Maybe it's like fucking, yeah. He flies over like Dresden or something. It's like this big fucking smoking crater of rubble and shit. He's like, what the fuck happened? Holy shit. And he goes back to base. And they're like, what are you talking about? Dresden's fine. Like, it was before the bombing. And then I think it was like years later, he, like the bombing happened or something. I think I'm mixing that up with two stories. Cause I think there's another story where a guy, he like, is trying to land at his military base, but all the colors are different. Like, everything just doesn't look right. He's like, oh, I'm not fucking landing there. What the hell? And then he circles back around or something, and then everything's normal. But, shit, I should have looked that up for this. I didn't even think about that before. But, yeah, there's, like, that'd be fucking weird to see Dresden or any city. Like, say there was, like, say you were driving your car and you go through, like, a fucking tunnel or something, and you're just at, like, the scene of 9/11. Like, holy fuck. And then you look on the news, and it's, like, 1999, so it's, like, fine. Yeah, that'd be weird, because it's like you see the future. Anyway, so what do you rate Slaughterhouse-Five, the novel, out of whiskey shots?
I'd probably give it a 5.
I as well give it a 5, and I think I give this the graphic novel a 4. You know what? I'll give that a 5 too. Actually, I really enjoyed that.
I mean, unless if we're going half stars, then I could make like 4.5. Because that's what I was thinking with the novel. Like, I was thinking like 4.5 would probably be my actual, but we're just
giving it a perfect 5 is a little, but I'll give it to, because I really enjoy these. I actually end up buying that Great Gatsby graphic novel just because I'm hoping maybe it has a little bit of the magic of this.
And I mean, like, and I read the novel, and granted the novel, it's not that big, but I almost read it in a weekend. So
yeah. I really like Kurt Vonnegut's writing style. The few short stories I read of his were really interesting. They're really good, so we should probably start, there's a podcast called Vonnegut Guys, or at least there used to be. Maybe that's what we'll become, and we'll, every, what do you say, 3 or 4 months we read a Vonnegut book.
Yeah, maybe.
We'll look up after, go off air what books he has, but, I think that'll be a good idea. Speaking of reading, what are you reading now that you finished that? James Bond. No, you finished James Bond.
I finished James Bond.
We're going to talk about this on the episode, but ended up a lot better than I thought.
Yeah.
At the beginning, it was a little tough getting into, and I think it was just because I wasn't really in the mood for a James Bond. And you said your edition wasn't the shitty one. Mine was.
Yeah, I didn't get all mine. Then I didn't have problems with it like you did.
Yeah, mine was really fucked up for some reason, and it kept having that hyperlink, and I kept pressing on accident, and it would go to the website. I was getting really irritated, but because I completely forgot Casino Royale had that fucked up torture scene where he's getting hit in the nuts over and over, because I remember from the movie.
Yeah,
I didn't think, for some reason, I didn't think
I didn't think that, I thought that was just a movie thing.
No.
We should stop talking about it.
Well, just one quick thing. The Daniel Craig Casino Royale movie was actually very close to the novel.
Yeah. From what I remember watching it, yeah.
So, I will say I enjoyed that. Maybe not so much of the misogyny, but other than that, it was pretty good.
There wasn't as much as I thought there was gonna be.
No, it calmed down a little bit. He did call that lady a bitch a couple times, but she ended up being a fucking bitch.
Yeah.
Anyway, stay tuned for a future episode where we talk about Casino Royale. I feel like we should just record one without the British guy, and if he wants to do one, we could just fucking do it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know
and who knows, by then we might even have more James Bond books read by then, by then.
I'm sure he'll just reach out to me randomly. Like, you good Saturday? Like, I guess. Spencer.
But other than that, I started to get back into Sleeping Beauties by Stephen King and Owen King.
I feel like you're having trouble fucking finishing that book.
Well, no, it's not.
Finish the fucking book.
It's not because I'm not enjoying the book. It's every time that I'm thinking, like, oh, I finally get time to get back to it. Kids like, hey, we got like 3 more things we need to read for the podcast and the website and stuff. Okay, just put it back.
It's funny. I seem to be able to read my books and then read the podcast book.
Well,
without any problem.
Because you don't let me know that we're reading it for the podcast. And you're like,
by the way, Spencer, Thursday, we're going to be talking about the Three Musketeers, so go read that 13,000-page tome real quick.
Like you wait until you're like halfway done reading something and you're like, hey, Spencer, guess what we're doing?
Guess what we're checking out?
Because again, with James Bond, I almost read James Bond in a weekend.
Yeah, it took me like a month because I would read literally like a chapter every couple days. And then I was like, I need to really fucking read this book. I was only on maybe chapter 10. And I was just like, you know what? I'm sick of fucking reading this book. I'm just going to read it. So I sat down for 1 hour and finished the fucking book. And I was like, oh, I actually ended up really liking that. Also, it's because I've been reading all these mangas while I'm reading James Bond. So I just keep thinking, like, I want to know where that's going. Because those are gigantic for no reason. Like, they have to be girthy.
Yeah, but then once Sleeping Beauties is done, then I'll have...
Reading in the Winter of Our Discontent with me, right?
No, that's your thing. Time Machine.
All right.
And then your Coin Locker Babies.
I think you'll fly through that one.
Those were my 5 winner.
Let me know when you're going to read Coin Locker Babies and bring it over so I can pronounce the names for you.
Okay.
Because without the proper Japanese pronunciation, you're gonna fucking jack up that book. You're gonna be reading it, and you're gonna every time you pick it up, you're gonna have a different name.
Who is this person?
Yeah, and it's gonna give because there's a lot of people with. I think from what I remember, a lot of people have like a K name, and they're very similar. So I'll tell you the proper pronunciation, and then that way it's easier to read. Like sometimes when I'm reading fancy Russian literature, I'll just look up the pronunciation before I even start because I'm like,
probably a good idea.
I'm gonna keep fucking this up, and then I'm just gonna get irritated. So once I know the pronunciation and I read it, I'm like, okay, even though this doesn't look anything like that name, I got the proper name, so I can just have it in my head. Anyway, if you folks want to, what do we want them to do? Read our work?
Read our stuff.
I have a newer story I posted last week. Controversial story. About a time loop.
Time loop.
Except for the kid in the book, he gets stuck in a death loop.
Bum, 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 bum.
The moment he dies, he keeps reliving over and over and over again. So, if you want to read that depressing thing, you can check out, what was that? The Death Loop at drunkenpenwriting.com. Spencer also had a flash fiction a couple weeks ago. What was the name of that? That was also a time thing.
It only takes a little or something like that.
It only takes just go to Spencer's author page. This is the last thing he posted. And then I actually got some shit coming up too, so keep a lookout for that. If you want to follow us on Twitter, send us memes. I'm sick of looking up memes. You send us book memes, funny writing memes, and OnlyFans memes. And maybe some search content if you're feeling daring. And you can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Drunken Pen Writing. Thanks for listening, and so it goes.
So it goes.
I only say that because Caleb 2 just killed somebody upstairs. I heard it. I heard a loud thump.